All right, to tell us more about this is Khayelihle Khumalo, SABC News reporter. Good afternoon, Khayelihle. We understand that the Sudan and DRC conflicts are possibly going to top the agenda, at least on the aspect of peace and security. Is this a sentiment you're getting on the ground?
Well, very much so, Fundo, especially as we know that the AU Peace and Security Council is going to meet tonight, where the leaders will have an opportunity just to get a picture on the ground. And obviously with the current situation in the DRC, where we do understand that there will be a presentation from João Lorenzo, the Angolan president, also who's the incoming AU chairperson. As you know, that he's been a leader of the Luanda process. And you go back to that recent summit in Dar es Salaam, where they said they should converge the Luanda process alongside the Nairobi process, which is led by the former Kenyan president Uhuru Kenyatta. But also we're expecting also the South African president Cyril Ramaphosa as well to offer some remarks. As you know, that South Africa is one of the troop contributing countries in the eastern parts of Congo, but also with the issue of Sudan as well. South Africa has been really vocal in terms of the current situation in Khartoum. And we've seen some of the key players coming to South Africa getting support of Pretoria to make sure that they really try and resolve this issue, where they do say over 25 million Sudanese are food insecure.
No, it's most certainly a very important session that will be had around the peace and security aspect. But just as we heard in that video by the president, there's also another important aspect, the election of the AU chair. Just talk us through the front runners.
A very contentious issue, Fundo. As you know, that it tends to be a very fierce competition where the candidates are vying for this particular position. As you know, that the Chadian diplomats, the outgoing AU Commission chairperson Mustafaki Mohammed is not eligible to run. So you do have a candidate, the current Foreign Affairs Minister from Djibouti, who has promised a litany of things to do around the reforms of the AU, but also talking about the issues of democracy, the unconstitutional change of government in the African continent, and many other promises as well. But someone also is very prominent will be the former Kenyan Prime Minister Raila Odinga. As much as he ran 5 times in Kenya trying to be the president, it did not succeed. But he does have hope that he's going to win. He has been crisscrossing the African continent. In fact, at some point he was right in South Africa, in Zimbabwe, so many countries as well. But also same theme as well around economic integration, around the issues of the autonomy of the AU, and many other things as well. But what also is very interesting is that you have also another candidate, a former Foreign Affairs Minister in Madagascar, but also similar sentiments as well around the issues of the reforms of the AU. But also he speaks about being responsive to the crises in the African continent, where the AU from time to time is accused to be very lethargic in terms of its approach when it comes to all these litany of issues.
Including coups, because ever so often when there's a coup, many criticize the African Union to say you're very reactive. They'll come in to condemn and say you need to go back to democratic processes. But when you have specific civil organizations within a country seeking assistance, there's no intervention timelessly until it's collapsed and you have something where you've got the military now that has come in.
Well, absolutely, because they always say the AU should be proactive, especially because for the longest time they've been speaking about these early warning systems. So when do they kick in? And also when you talk about the autonomy of the African Union, the funding itself, where the bulk of funds are coming from outside sources, the likes of EU and many other external players. So that has been the criticism of the AU. For example, during the time of Paul Kagame, for example, he was the champion of these reforms for the AU in terms of these commissions that they have in terms of the structures, for example. But I suppose, Mfundo, what is very interesting, for example, you do have South Africa's Lerato Mataboge, who is now the new commissioner for infrastructure and energy, a very key portfolio, because if you talk about 600 million Africans who are still deprived of energy, who are still battling, but also when you talk about the infrastructure, when you look at the flagship project of the AU itself, you know, the issues around movement in the African continent, where you must connect in Europe when you go to a certain country,
yes,
to Africa, really an indictment to this particular institution.
There was certainly historic election there of the Deputy Director General. And then to other issues that are possibly on the agenda. What are we expecting?
Well, obviously, another very topical issue, Mfundo, the current situation in Palestine, albeit you do have a ceasefire, we do understand there'll be a representation from Palestine. It's been a tradition of some sort where they do come to these gatherings, where they really seek supports from the African continent, albeit with that controversy where there was observer status for Israel. Is it still going to be on the agenda? Will the leaders have an opportunity to look into that? But also other outstanding issues around climate change. A lot of countries in the African continent, for example, they are battling with this issue, the drought, the implications where people are moving from one center to the other, but also terrorism as well in the African continent. When you talk about the Sahel, when you talk about the Horn of Africa, the issue in Somalia, where from time to time Al-Shabaab will have these constant strikes. So it's going to be a very massive issue for the African leaders to look into these matters, even the implementation of the Agenda 2063. How far are they in achieving all these ideals and aspirations that they have?
Well, certainly an important convention for them to take stock. Khayelihle, as always, thank you very much for that reportage. That's Khayelihle Khumalo, SABC News reporter, just taking us through what we can expect at the AU Summit this weekend.